One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Have you ever wondered what it would be like to go to the moon? To be the first one actually on the moon? Well, one man succeeded. Hi, welcome back to another episode of Movie Review. Today I am reviewing First Man. That movie was incredibly awesome. It was well done. It was amazing. It is awesome. Okay, so you must be wondering, what's this movie all about, First Man? Well, it's all about Neil Armstrong, who goes to the moon, the first man to make it to the moon. But not the first person to be in space, but the first person to land on the moon and say his famous words, which I'll get to when we get to that part. So, Neil Armstrong is just a regular, ordinary man. He had a son who is older, and he had a daughter. Well, unfortunately, the daughter died at the age of 2 of a tumor in her brain. And he was never the same after that. I mean, literally never the same. He would be just seeing things, and it would remind him of his daughter. Or, seems like I got something in my mouth. Hold on. I think I got it out. But he never seemed the same. Like, as it goes, he wants to become an astronaut. Well, as it goes, that's the main focus of the movie. And so he applies for a job to become an astronaut, and he is questioned, and they ask a bunch of questions that he asked. And the last question they ask is, will this affect you because of the loss of your daughter? And he's like, well, of course. But, I'll make it through because, it's part of life to have someone who dies. It's part of life to lose someone. I mean, we hope that you don't lose someone at an early age. Like Neil Armstrong lost his daughter, who was 2 years old. And so he was just never the same. So he finally gets into the program. Literally, he gets into the program. So they have a bunch of tests that they have to do. They have to see what it's like to be on 3 axes. So he's strapped into a machine, and he's turning and going crazy all over the place. And he passes out and fails because he could not withstand all that turning and everything without passing out. So he finally regains consciousness, and they're like, okay, do it again. So he does it again, and next thing you know, he's throwing up in a toilet. Just because he is so sick of all this turning upside down in every which way. It's no fun, let's put it that way. Some people enjoy it. I personally would throw up and not enjoy it, but some people would. And then when he gets out of the bathroom, this other guy is like there, and he's like, okay, over there, like, go to the bathroom. And the guy throws up in the toilet because, of course, he's spun all around in every which way, and it's crazy. And so he finally, with that, they do tests, and then they have to do what's called a Gemini test. So they run a series of tests to see how it would be to attach to a capsule in space. And it seems successful as it goes, but one of the capsules does not make it back. Okay, so one of these Gemini capsules does not make it back to Earth. It literally explodes. Like, poof. Done for. Like, it kills the 2 pilots. And so they're at a funeral, and while they're there, Neil Armstrong is walking over to, I guess, the bathroom or somewhere, and he sees a fireplace, and right in front of it is his 2-year-old daughter, as he remembers, and she's really not there. Best way to put it, she is not there at all. So he says to his wife, well, I want to go. And she's like, well, I'm helping so-and-so out, and, And so he walks out the door, he gets in the car, and he drives off home. And lo and behold, his wife is stuck at the party. Well, not the party, but the funeral. And so what happens is she gets a ride from a friend who's like the neighbor who's right across. And so they do a bunch of other tests as it goes with the Gemini, and Neil Armstrong is finally able to get into the capsule. Finally able to go up into and try to attach to this other capsule from this Gemini capsule that has to attach, because what it's going to do is going to allow them to attach and be able to float to the moon and all that. And so as he's in there, there's a problem with the capsule in front of him that he attached. And they're spinning out of control. They're going crazy. Like, I mean, they're just turning and turning and turning and turning and turning like crazy, out of control, and they can't do it. And so there's this meter that says when you hit this number, you're going to start to pass out, and pass it, you will literally pass out. And so they're going and they exceed the number, and his buddy, Neil Armstrong's buddy in the capsule, is passed out completely, but Neil Armstrong is trying so hard to stay in control, trying to just not pass out, and he finally figures out how to stop the capsule, the first capsule that's attached to them, to stop spinning out of space. But the factor is, he really doesn't get that capsule to stop. He has to disconnect, and he finally gets himself to stop, his ship to stop, and they get back into orbit, and they survive, they touch down. Then they're like, okay, now that we've had this done, now we can start sending the Apollo rocket. So they do a bunch of tests with Apollo rockets, and you got Neil Armstrong's neighbor who's in a capsule with 2 other people next to them, and a fire breaks out, and you're like, whoa, like, how are they going to get out? How are they going to get out? Because they've been locked into this capsule. I mean, there's a door that locks them in, then there's another door to the rocket, and they're trapped in there, and they can't, and all you hear is poof. Big explosion right in the cockpit of the capsule. Everyone in there is dead. I mean, literally dies. And you know, it just seems like that Neil Armstrong keeps losing family, friends, and it's very difficult on him. But by this time, he's already had his first son, Richard, I think it is, and I think his other son is Mark. But they're kind of grown up and all this, and so with that Apollo test going, they keep going with the testing. They keep going because, you know, they really want to test to see how they can get to the moon. And so they finally get to the part where Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin and another guy are in the Apollo, and they are heading to the moon. They are heading to the moon. But before they get there, before they even get into that capsule, before they get there, Neil Armstrong has to explain to his kids that he might not come back. It's a possibility. As an astronaut, your rocket could explode on going up into the air. It could explode in the atmosphere. It could explode in space. Something could go wrong that trying to get back down could kill them. Trying to get to the moon could kill them. Anything is possible. And he has to explain to his kids that there is a possibility of it. And so he's trying to explain what they might be facing with. And they ask a bunch of questions, and the oldest son doesn't want a hug. He just says, you know, I want a handshake because I'm sad that you're going and that you could die and that you might not be coming back and all these possibilities of everything. And so they finally get strapped. So Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and someone else get strapped into the Apollo 11 rocket, and you see them go up, and that is history, major history in the 60s. I mean, they thought that space travel was not possible, but one of the first people to get to space to go around was the Russians. They are the Russians. And so that's what made the Americans want to go more into space, because if the Russians are doing it, we got to do it, and we got to get to the moon first. So they finally get into the capsule, they're going, and everything's fine. They detach the first part of the rocket, then they detach the second part, and then you got this little ship that they're in, and they finally get to the capsule that needs to get them around the moon in an orbit. And they're in their little, how do I explain it? It's like, I can't even explain what the contraption they're in, but they're in something, and then they finally get to the capsule. And the capsule is where they are going to send the ship down. Okay, well, into orbit of the moon's atmosphere, and they're going to be able to transport themselves down to the moon. And so they do that. They are there, and they get into their little contraption that they need to I'm going to say rover, but it's not a rover. It's a little spaceship that lands, and it lands on the moon, and they are so shocked to just be there and all that because they ran out of fuel. I mean, literally, it looked like they ran out of complete fuel just to touch ground, which is very difficult when you got a big giant crater in front of you that you might go into and not get out. So they finally hit the moon, and that is where they attach themselves to the ship. And you got Neil Armstrong, who walks out and he's like wondering what the heck's going on, like, and all this stuff. And this is where the famous quote that says, "One small step for man, one giant step for mankind." And then you see Neil Armstrong's, like, you see his footprint there and everything, but you see Buzz Aldrin, like, later, who comes out of the ship and all this stuff, and they film all this. I mean, literally, it's nationwide, it's history, it's amazing. And they finally get back down from there, from the moon. They finally get out from the moon by their ship having, I guess, an extra fuel tank or somewhere or something that rocket them up to the capsule that was allowing them to be able to touch down Earth, and they become like heroes, and they become great. And I mean, literally, but the thing is, they have to stay in quarantine for a full month because they don't know if there was any space bugs or anything that could have happened, because they don't know much about space. I mean, literally, they have no clue. This is the first time they've gone to the moon. And so they finally get down, and you see Neil Armstrong's wife is like, "I want to see him," and they're in two different rooms. He's in the quarantine room, she's in a classroom that you can look through, and he can look through too, and all that. And they're just there, and they like kind of like just put their hands together, or they kiss or something through the glass, and the movie ends. I'm sorry to say, but that's the worst crappy ending ever. Like, I mean, it's just horrible how they end it. But it could have been a lot better if they did the ending a little bit better, but that's how it is. And you know, Neil Armstrong made history. He is one of the great men that made history of all time, and he'll always be in the history books no matter what as it goes. But that movie was amazing. The storyline was great. Ryan Gosling was great. I mean, really, for like, I love that movie. I mean, I would buy it just because it was an amazing movie. So I hope you enjoyed this movie review. If you did, please hit that thumbs up button. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you're new to help me out with blowing up this channel with subscribers. And don't forget that I upload a video every day.